All right, off to the races. Hello, everyone. Let's talk about query strings and query params and URL search params and all that kind of stuff. So, let's review some stuff. So, parts of a URL. We've got, oops, this. What part of the URL is that? Shout it out. Starts with an S.
The schema?
Not schema. Close. One letter off.
Scheme?
Scheme. There we go. Schema is something else. So that's the scheme. What's that?
Subdomain.
Subdomain. What's that?
Domain.
Domain. What's that?
The path.
The path. There we go. What's that?
Fragment.
Port.
Fragment. And then lastly, we have query string. So query string starts with a question mark. And then everything else is key value pairs. So this is some key equals some value. If I have more than one, separated by ampersands. Another key. Another value. All right, ask me some questions about query strings.
So starting out, what is it exactly that the query string is being used for in any given moment?
Love it. So some uses for query strings. Filtering, it's a pretty good one. I want to list a Pokemon, but I only want the ones that start with A. So you pass that to your query string. It's the same resource. You're just sending the resource some additional data. Sort order. And I want to see the Pokemon descending. I want to see the Pokemon ascending. Those aren't different pages. It's just some data that we send along with that. And like, hey, both of those might be things that we maybe want to send to somebody else. Check out these real estate listings sorted by price from low to high. Check out what the lowest one is. So you send that URL over to somebody, they click on it, and they go, wow, oh my God, prices are out of control. Because they're seeing the same thing that you are. Developer didn't have to write two different house listing pages. We're using the query string to send some additional data over. Other things that we might use the query string for. You could use it for API keys. Like, kind of got to be careful with that one because, as I think everybody at this point has answered at this point, this stuff is public. It's not encrypted. Your router sees the URL that you're going to, including the query string, as does your ISP, as does everybody in between. So there's really, you can't do anything secret up here, but client-side API keys usually aren't secret anyway. So I Like that might be a place you do. So, but yeah, if you were using the OMDB API, we used it for that. All those are pretty good reasons. Let's take a look at a couple. If we just browse around the internet for like 20 seconds, we'll be lousy with them. All right, so if my oldest kid's obsessed with this movie or show, I don't even know what it is, called Squid Game. Old man Cole really doesn't know what Squid Game is. All right. Hey, what do we know? We got some query params. Let's take a look at them. Okay, so some things that came over in this. First, let's break it up a little bit. So we have a Q that's equal to squid plus game. And we have a T that's equal to new EXT. And we have an ATB that's equal to whatever that is. We have an IA that's equal to web. It's just variables that we can send in to like configure the page. So Q, well, that's the query. That's like the actual thing that I searched for. That plus gets swapped out with a space. So if I send this to you, you end up seeing the search results for Squid Game just like I do. It's another good use. Search. IA, I'm guessing IA is information architecture and web is like the version of the page. So maybe if I don't know, this will actually work, but maybe if I change that to mobile. Nothing. It uses that to figure out which kind of display to do. Because maybe, I don't know, it doesn't want to go off of your viewport or it's got some reason for that. ATB, I don't exactly know what that is. That sort of looks like a version. And when you click around, like within a site, your query string tends to stick around. So that might be ensuring that you're using a consistent version of the site as you, because like they might be pushing new versions all the time. And maybe this keeps the experience consistent with you where it's always going version 320-7 and then it's got 2 underscores for like any versions inside of that. I don't know. It's just a way to send data to a page and you can access that data with JavaScript and do whatever with it. If I go over to Wikipedia, anything over here? No query strings. Any of these? Nope. What about if I go to the old gray lady? Let's see, can I find a mildly less depressing article? Let's see, no query string there. No query string there. Come on, guys, give me just something. Go to the Washington Post. A lot of times news sites will, there we go. Oh, got rid of it. That's interesting. Do you see that? Watch the URL when I go to this, this page. So it's just WashingtonPost.com now. And when I click on it, it's going to have a query string, and then the query string is going to go away. There it is right there. And now it's gone. So my hunch is that they're using that to check out what it is. It says IT ID HP more top stories. So what that could be, I don't know what IT ID is, but that it was more top stories says, oh, and by the way, you came to this page from this other one. So if you remember, the web is stateless. Can anybody tell me what stateless means in this context?
Like it means it doesn't know the previous HTTP request.
It doesn't know anything about any other request that's happening. So if this is you and you make a request over here and you get your response back, and after it parses this response, it's got some hyperlinks on it, right? So then you click on one of the links. Well, that just requests another file from that server. That doesn't know anything about where you came from or anything like that. So you could pass that in the query string, and then when it gets that, it can throw that in a database and go, by the way, most people came from this previous site. So you could use it as a tool to make these requests more stateful. Get used a ton in analytics stuff. So that happens when I poke around Amazon. Tons of query string stuff here. So just like before, let's break this up a little bit. All right, so that's what Amazon has on just going around their site. So a couple things that I notice. The encoding, that's kind of an interesting one. Oops, there's another one. So setting the encoding over, this might be like, oh, and by the way, do the UTF-8 version of the site because we need these characters. Let's say I have a whole bunch of Chinese glyphs. UTF-8 can show an awful lot of characters, but especially in a lot of East and South Asian languages, they have a lot more characters. You need more like actual symbols. So maybe you do UTF-16 in those cases. Well, all right. Well, then your JavaScript can read that and go, oh, okay, well, I know I need to use this type of character encoding. As for what all of these things are, my best guess is trackers. This is, since the web is stateless, things like this are a way that you can track somebody from page to page as they navigate around your site. It's not the only way to do that, but that is a way to do that. All that stuff is query strings. Questions? Hit me.
Do the order of the key value pairs matter in any way?
Not at all. You can think of it exactly like an object. It's just key value pairs the same way an object is. Order of properties in an object doesn't matter. Doesn't matter in a query string either.
But if you were to leave one of these key value pairs out, that would essentially change the page that you're looking at, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so let's go back to that DuckDuckGo example. So if I go over here, I can move this to be at the end instead. It is the exact same page looking for the exact same thing. If I leave out that query, though, well, now it doesn't know what I searched for. So it takes me back here. There are also some of these, like, for example, if I'm back on Amazon, these like tracking ones, you can usually just take those out. And that's probably the privacy smart move when you are like, if I go, oh, hey, I'm going to send this link over to my buddies. And so I pull it up in the chat. And I go, oh, hey, guys, check this out. If you get rid of that entire query string, I'll bet they see the exact same thing. But it's not like tracking you between pages anymore. Hey, what do you know? Still worked. So a lot of the stuff that's just based around tracking, like that doesn't necessarily do anything different with the page. All it affects is Amazon's analytics around this. Good question. More. All right, let's do some stuff with query strings. So let's head over to Code Sandbox. And go ahead and fire up a vanilla app. Blow all this out.
It's slow today.
It is a little slow today. And let's practice pulling key value pairs out. So if I go over to this URL bar and do query string, by the way, you can do it right after the slash. You can do it no slash. The query string does not care. There's no difference between those. If I do something like search term equals Fozzie plus bear. Okay, so I don't get anything. Now, if I make this query string is location, oops, dot href. Oh, so no, it's just location dot query string. There we go. So I do location dot query string. And take a look at the console. It's going to make me do window.location, maybe. Or no, it's not query string, it's search. There we go. So if I log that, hey, what do you know? It's that part of the URL. So now I've taken something from the URL and started using it in JavaScript. A lot of what we're doing in this like DOM manipulation JavaScript stuff is trying to move stuff from one technology to another. Somebody filling something out that you wrote in HTML on the browser. How do we get that into JavaScript? Well, we have them do it in a form, and then we read the data out of the form. Somebody goes to a particular URL. Well, how do I pull the stuff out of the URL? Well, I can use the query string and stuff to get pieces of that out. So that's kind of the idea there. But if I wanted to get these individual pieces, that kind of sucks to do by hand. Like, it's still doable. I could do like search term equals query string dot split. Well, first I need to slice off that question mark from the front. So I could do like slice one dot split on ampersand. Oh, there's not an ampersand in this one, right? There's not. I want to split on the equals, and then I want to get the first index that comes back from that. So if I do that and log it, oop, that wasn't it. Baby steps. Okay, so that took the question mark off. Oop, not 0, equals. Cool, then I got Fozzie plus Bear. And so then I need to take that and then replace the plus sign with a space. Okay, that's an awful lot of gymnastics to get a value out of a query string. So, fuck that. We can take that query string, query parameters equals new URL search params, pass in the query string, and then instead we can say query parameters dot get search term, and I get Fozzie Bear also. So that's the options. I can do that to try to pull something out of a URL, or I can do that. That's a lot better. Especially when we start looking at doing more. I wanted to do ampersand encoding equals UTF-8. Yep, something I didn't like in there. And encoding equals, what did I do wrong there? There we go. Just a way to pass data into a page. And then we could use that to look up a particular Pokemon or a particular recipe, or we could use that to determine whether or not we reverse the array that we look up. That's like sort order. All that kind of stuff. Questions about any of this?
So
Is that
I
an
actually,
underscore? I'm sorry, Sean, go
no,
ahead.
please go ahead. No, I insist. Go.
All right, that search term, is that an underscore there?
It is,
For
yeah.
query parameters dot get search? Okay, because when I ran that, I got null in my console log.
Because
right.
that's how it was written in the HT in the URL, right?
Yep.
It was search underscore term.
Yeah, so if I get rid of that and just jam it all together, that works too. Oops. Save. That'll work. It just has to match whatever you put here. It could be S. That also works. More questions?
So I had read somewhere online doing research on this topic that we can also access these key value pairs with for of loops.
Yep.
I was curious if that's like the best way, because naturally it seems like that for of loop is a good way. If for some reason I didn't know the name of the key value pair, I can insert it there and it would populate it for me.
I guess you're never going to be in a situation where you don't know what the key is. The whole point is that you don't know what the value is, but yeah, you get, but like you could iterate over it and then do what with it? Like you would still need to know what you were doing with the stuff that you're getting. So you can iterate over it with for of to what end is what I would say. More questions?
So this may be what comes next, but like when we did the Pokemon thing, we
Mhm.
used queries strings to query params to set the new search. Is that
Yep.
where we're going? Okay.
Other questions?
So the encoding is the UTF-8.
Yep.
So if you don't use that, it doesn't know how to read.
No, like it. That was just another example of some data that I could be putting in here. I'm not doing anything with it right now.
I mean, like if you don't encode it's like it talks about encoding in the.
Oh, so yeah, encoding is just a totally different topic, but real quick because it's kind of interesting. Your computer doesn't understand A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It understands beeps and boops. So there's a table where it maps particular beeps and boops to letters. So if we have like 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. So that's an example of a binary number. And you can imagine like that's a real easy thing to send with electricity, because if it's kind of got a timer and it's going, all right, there's nothing, there's something, there's nothing, there's something, there's nothing, there's something, there's nothing, there's something. So over a cable, you send these little pulses. You have something that turns those pulses into beeps and boops. And then you go, okay, every 8 beeps and boops, let's figure out what decimal number that turns into. And so the way that you convert something in from binary to decimal is that each of these is like double the previous one. So that's 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128. So then you just multiply it. So you get 1, 4, 16, 64. Add all those together. 5, 21, 65, 85. So that particular set of pulses turns into that particular arrangement of beeps and boops, which means 85. And then there's a huge table for each number that maps it to like whatever 85 is. So the most simple one is called ASCII. ASCII table. Cool. So what was that? 85? 85 is uppercase U. And so those beeps and boops mean uppercase U. ASCII is an encoding scheme. So like what we did here, that's what ASCII is. It groups beeps and boops into 8s. And then every 8, it turns that into a character and then interprets it however. The problem is if you do a little mental math on this, we have 255 or 256, I guess, options for numbers here, 0 through 255. So we only have 255 characters that we can work with. And here they are. So like at its most basic, there's computing. UTF-8 is 8 of these. Now you may be thinking, okay, so it's 8 times 256? No, it is 256. Like each additional beep or boop doubles the number of possibilities. And there's 8 in there, so it's like that times 2 to the 64 is like how many more options you get. So how many characters are in UTF-8? There you go. Kind of a lot. So that's emoji. That's different languages. That's handy symbols like arrows. Lots and lots and lots. That's character encoding. So if you're in a situation where you only support ASCII, you won't be able to do UTF-8 characters. And that was actually the case for, like at the beginning of my career. Like not every browser supported UTF-8. There was a lot of programs that didn't really support UTF-8. And so you could either do emoji or be widely compatible. So things like that encoding flag were really useful for letting the whatever engine know, oh, by the way, you can use more than 255 characters. Or if that comes out as ASCII encoding, all right, we're stuck with 256 characters. And that is the shortest explanation that I can think of for what character encoding is all about. More questions about pulling data out of query parameters and into JavaScript. Also, Sarah, did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So let's do this. Let's pass a Pokemon into this. Say Pokemon equals Pikachu. Then over here, we're going to save that in a variable. And then log it. Like so. So if I do that, and then send off the request. There's Pikachu. Take a second and get that far. Your screen should look like mine. All right, anybody having trouble getting this far? All right. So now that we have this Pokemon as a variable, we can do anything we can do with variables with it. For example, let's make a fetch request to the Pokemon API. https://pokeapi.co/API/v2/Pokemon/whatever the value of this is. And then parse the response.
You started that with backticks, correct?
Correct, because I needed to interpolate that variable in there. Good catch. I parse the response. Comes back as a Pokemon. And then I take a peek at that. So if I did that right, I should have Pikachu coming back here. Yep, there he is. Take a second and get that far.
So, put concisely,
Mm-hmm.
the query string is that part of the URL that we're looking at. The window.location.search gives you that part of the URL,
Yes.
and then the URL search params. That is the part that I'm hanging up on. I get everything else that follows it and everything before it, but that new URL search params, I'm
Sure.
still getting a little hung up on.
Sure. So window.location.search, let's log that real quick. Okay, the reason it's called a query string is because it's a string. Like, I can't pull the data out of that without doing string manipulation to break this up into pieces. URL search params does all that work for me and effectively turns this into an object. And then I have these get methods. It's not query parameters dot Pokemon or whatever. It's a little bit different, but it's the exact same idea. So passing this into URL search params turned it from a string into an object, basically. Because I can't do query query string dot Pokemon. Strings don't have a dot Pokemon property. For me to be able to do anything with that string, I need to put it into something that breaks this into key value pairs for me. That's why we need URL search params. Chris, does
Gotcha.
that
That
make
makes
sense?
sense. Yes.
Cool.
Yes. I was console logging query parameters and seeing what that returned, but and then I see the dot get in there.
Yeah. So
That's when you.
Yeah, it's a little confusing because if we take a look at that object, you might not get back what you're expecting. So if I do that, I see all of these things. I don't actually see Pikachu in there anywhere. What gives, man? It's kind of complicated. I would not worry about it right now. But your data is in there. It's owned by this URL search params. And all of these are functions that you can call that work with that data. So
That makes sense.
Yeah, all of these things are things that we can do. We could return them back sorted. We could add a query parameter to it. We could delete something from the query string. All of these things are our options, and one of them is get.
Yeah, and then that's the one that we're picking. So I see what you mean. It's similar to an object, but not identical.
Right.
So that we could use the dot get because that's one of the quote unquote properties of the object. And then we use it for
a method of the object.
a method. Okay. Gotcha.
And these are real objects. Like you might have seen me kind of dance around that objects in JavaScript aren't actually objects. They're more like dictionaries or hashes or whatever. That's what a real object looks like. Is it has this internal state that you can't see, like what the current query string is, but it exposes all of these methods for working with that data. That's a real object. And so we're actually going to do quite a bit more of that in our last unit, because that's how Java works with everything.
And so then to I guess tie it back to where we are right now.
Mm-hmm.
You dot get the string of Pokemon. You're looking at your query string, and like you said, they have a key and they have a value.
Yes.
So you're looking for the value associated with the key of Pokemon.
Bingo.
Okay, this is making so much more sense.
Good. Other questions or observations?
My sandbox says there's an error and it's undefined.
All right.
I have no idea what's wrong.
Well, why don't you screen share and let's see if we can debug it.
Okay.
Everybody's been working on their debugging chops. Okay, so my hunch is that how it says cons is not defined. Well, there's nothing on your screen that says cons. It runs your code as you're typing. And so you see that thing next to filter that looks like a no sign?
Yes.
So click that. That's going to clear out your console. And then click in the URL bar and then just hit enter to rerun the request.
And it took out the Pokemon thing.
Did it?
As soon as I hit enter, it just removed it.
All right, well, let's put it back. Oh, also your file isn't saved.
I don't know where to save on Sandbox. Have no idea.
So what's the key command that saves things?
Control S, but it doesn't go anywhere.
But do you see how it saved it?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so hit enter inside of the text editor.
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay. It's in drafts,
I
but
know.
all of my stuff stays in
Did
drafts.
you hit enter? Okay.
There.
Do you see how the little symbol next to index.js turned into a circle?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now do your Control S again. Hey, you see how it turned into a X?
Mm-hmm.
That means it's saved. And that's the case with an awful lot of things, including basically every text editor. A circle means that you have unsaved changes, And X, just like that means you can close it because it's already saved.
Okay.
All right.
So if I put Pikachu back in here,
Yeah.
how do you spell Pikachu?
Pikachu. There you go.
See, I hit enter and it disappears.
You had my attention before, but now you have my interest. So let's.
If you click the little refresh button next to it, instead of hitting enter, it'll refresh it when you have it in there.
Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Gotta put my question mark in here. All right, hit refresh. Nope, took it away.
Is anybody else having the same problem?
No.
Huh.
I am not. No.
So
I use
now I'm
use
looking-
refresh on mine, and it works.
I'm wondering if there's something in here that's making it like error out. All right, so now I'm debugging. So I'm looking at the code. Query string window.location.search. That looks like how you're supposed to access a query string to me. Turning it into query parameters. Const query parameters equals new URL search params. You invoke it, pass in query string. That looks about right to me too. Const Pokemon equals query parameters dot get, passing in the string of Pokemon. That looks about right to me too. Inside of the fetch, we've got a template string https://pokeapi.co/api/v2/Pokemon/. Then we do the interpolation. $, curly bracket, Pokemon variable, closing bracket, end of string. Pokemon variable, that looks about right to me. We parse the response. We take the Pokemon that we get back, and then we log it. Okay, so I'm curious. All that code looks fine to me. Let's try this. Go up to like your actual browser's URL bar and hit enter.
Up here?
Yeah, all the way. Yeah, exactly. So do
Okay.
that to reload the page.
You want me to refresh
Nope,
it?
Just hit enter.
Just hit enter.
Just hit enter.
Okay. I'm holding my breath.
Well, you got a whole bunch of people in your corner, so if you can't get it figured out, you're at least among friends.
I hate Sandbox because it never does anything right. So I'm like, okay, whatever.
Okay, so all this looks pretty good. Now let's do it again on the internal browser. All right, hit enter.
I hit enter and nothing
Oh, hey, take a
happened.
look.
No,
down your
it worked.
console.
It worked. It worked. Pull up hit your console button. It worked.
Hey!
So what happened?
I don't know. He did something funny that Code Sandbox didn't like before any of this, and then it was irritated with you. Who knows?
Gotcha. Well, thank you.
It's the equivalent of like, have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again? Like,
Right.
There's a lot of stuff in tech that works that way. Code Sandbox didn't exist a couple years ago. This is still just like stuff that people made. All right. So hopefully we're all this far. So now let's try throwing that Pokemon in the page. So if we look over in HTML, we've got a container over here with an ID of app. Let's go ahead and grab that. Document.query selector. So now I've got a reference to that. I could do something like make an image. And then I could make that image's source equal to Pokemon dot sprites dot front underscore default, and then I could throw that into the document. And there's Pikachu. Pika Pika. Take a second and get this far. All right, now for the cool part. If we change this thing in the query string to Mew, hey, now it's Mew. If I change this to Bulbasaur, now it's Bulbasaur. Nothing about my JavaScript code changed. Nothing about my HTML changed. I took a variable out of the URL and then used it in JavaScript to make a new page. That's pretty cool. So now the thing that we, okay, but pause there, questions.
So in my browser, I've just got $sign image coming up as written text.
Did you try passing it in as a string instead of a variable?
No, it's got quotations on it
Like,
with the $sign. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yep. I bet.
Other questions?
Hey, Kyle.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. For your syntax, you're doing the $signs
Mm-hmm.
you said it's to represent like DOM objects, right? So you don't forget. Is that
Correct.
what that's for? Okay.
Yeah, they don't do anything. If I take them
Right.
out, all this code is exactly the same. So I do that. Hey, Bulbasaur is still there. If I take it out of app, it just helps me keep track of what is and isn't a DOM element, especially if, like, I don't say IMG. I'm a little bit more descriptive about what it is, where it's like Pokemon portrait. But maybe I have an object called Pokemon portrait that represents all of the source and the alt text and like a bunch of other things. And so then I can separate out what that object is from the DOM element that I'm going to put all that data in. So I put a $sign on the DOM element.
Understood.
This isn't a common thing either, like not anymore. Most people don't do this. So don't expect to see anybody at Ford doing this, but I find it helpful for myself, and you are free to borrow it.
On my code, I put like, I don't know if it's common practice, but like I put like comments, like on the top, I'll put like DOM objects. And then after that, like I have a section for functions and I'll put that. I don't know if that's like good or I shouldn't do that.
No, like that's really common, and that's one of my like not in my house rules. I have a whole write-up about it in the reading on comments, but things like that tend to clutter up your code a lot. And most of the time they get used as an excuse for not coming up with a good enough variable name. Now, that's not to say a lot of people don't do that, because a lot of people do exactly that. And I actually think it's totally reasonable to do that when you're figuring out a problem. I mean, fuck, earlier today when I was doing the, trying to fix that display order bug in the thing, let me show you the code. This was in. Okay, so the problem was I have different lists of, because like things with questions and things with submissions or readings or whatever, like, questions are different than everything else. So I have question performances and I have non-question performances. And then I need to get your most recent performance like from each of them. But once they're in HTML, they all get treated the same. And so I'm looking at this code I wrote 2 months ago and haven't looked at since then. And I'm going like static variables, everything but questions, only questions, normalizing questions and non-questions. So like when I was debugging this earlier, this is exactly what I did. Notes to myself as I was solving the problem. Don't keep those in your code. They're just future lies waiting to be happening. Because what happens is over time, this code changes. And now last question performances is actually something slightly different. Now it's questions and inbox prompt responses or something like that. And then I look at the comment and go, oh, it's only questions, but it's actually two different things because I didn't update the comment when I changed what this was. So now it's a lie. Now it's like actively deceiving me. That's the danger of like relying on comments for things like that, is like they can really screw up your thinking. And when you end up in situations where your logic is just really hard to follow, that's the thing that needs to get fixed, not adding comments. And like, like we're all human and sometimes we're in a big fucking hurry and there's just no time. For example, I have one that's like hooks. Nope, not that one. Context program. It's probably in here. Something like this. I have the LMS set up to work with multiple programs. So I could be running a program for you guys, and then I could be running a 1-week program for someone else, and then a 5-week program for somebody else, and all those could have different data. I don't have anybody else doing that right now, so rather than write all the code to manage that, I just hard-coded the program ID in here. So something like that, that deserves a comment. But then there's other things, context. Oh man, where is it? It is some code that I am not proud of. Utilities. Here we go. So this is an example of using comments because the logic is too confusing. Figuring out what the next link when you're on a page in the LMS is, like, it's just this long list of logic. Does the thing that you're going through have children? Is it the last one, or does it have more after it? So I put those comments in there. This is pretty shitty code, honestly. Like, so whenever I see code like this, what that really means is I should be putting these in functions that are like has more, and then take in whatever, and then I copy paste all this code in there, and then say has more. That's way better than a comment, because that can't get out of sync the way that a comment can. So that's my mini rant on using comments to like organize your code. One exception I'll give you is with what y'all collectively know about CSS right now, you should absolutely be using comments to break up your CSS into different sections. But the solution to that in like real production code is the same. Like split it up into more files. Name the files better, like that kind of thing.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey, Kyle.
Yeah.
I ran into something kind of interesting. Maybe you in the group might want to
Yeah.
explore it.
Show me.
Sweet. So just playing with this, I'm sorry, guys, might fall under the category of just API manipulation. If it's too far out there, we can totally stop. But we got ourselves, once everyone can see, a nice shiny little mute here. And what I was trying to do was pull out all the possible moves for it. But it just came out as object, object, object. So I'm guessing I did something wrong here.
Ability.text content is Pokemon.moves. Who can tell Sean what he did wrong?
I want to guess that the text content of dot moves is an array. So you probably want to pull out each individual element within the array instead of the array itself.
Ding, 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 ding. You can't.
So does that mean you have to put brackets?
No, it means you can't set the text content of an element to an object or an array because they're not text.
Oh.
Your browser doesn't know how to do that. And so every time you try, it goes object, object.
And so the way that we would be able to do that, would it be through reduce?
Let's see. If you have an array of 342 objects and you want to turn them into 342 strings, that would be a
map.
And if you wanted to add 342 strings to like the ability or whatever, that's a little bit trickier. What would that be?
Why do I want to say reduce?
Not reduce.
No, would it be a for each iteration?
So that's what it will eventually have to be to append those. You could add another step in between where you take an array of objects, turn it into an array of strings, turn those array of strings into an array of like span objects or paragraph or list items or something like that, and then for each over those and append each of those to the app.
Oh man, that's a lot of steps.
No kidding.
Okay, cool.
No one said being a wizard would be easy. Okay, one more thing I want to show you about query strings is a pretty neat, slick way that we can generate them. So if we head over to HTML, let's add a form into the HTML. Oops. And the form is going to have labeled input called search. And to attach those, I have to give it an ID. Oops, sorry, 4. That's 4. That's ID. We can give it a name too. It won't actually matter in this case. And then we need a button. So input, type, submit the value of search. Cool. Oh, actually, no. The name of this is going to be Pokemon. Yeah. Cool. Watch this. If I make this Charmander. What? I don't know why I didn't update the URL there and why it took my form away. Oh, it's because these aren't saved. That's why. Cool. So I say Charmander. I say Mew. There's mu. Because if I have a form and I submit it, the default method for a form is get. What get will do is take the names of the inputs, turn it into a query string. So ta-da, that's how we do search. All right, get caught up. I have to the bathroom real quick. Be right back.
What did he go change over on his on the JavaScript page to save it?
Here, I'll-
He didn't change anything on the JavaScript.
Oh, I thought he switched over JavaScript for a second and fixed something.
He put method get in the form where his cursor is, but he took it back out.
Matt, yours is doing everything right?
It worked, but then my search bar disappeared after I ran it.
I think you just have to save it like in your sandbox and then it stays.
It
Oh,
goes
gotcha.
back to the current queries param that you have, and then it has a search bar again.
There it is. Okay, thank you.
Look it up,
That's what
a
he
bunch
said.
of nerds.
That's why he said you got to save it. So I was like, okay. Yep, there it is. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Of course, mine doesn't work.
Is it the search that you're trying to put in doesn't work?
Yeah, I've tried putting it in here and nothing happens. It just disappears. It's like, okay, I'm done. I could put something in there and that's it, but it doesn't show up anything.
Are you sure you spelled it right? Because if you put a name and it doesn't exist, it just nothing happens.
That's the other
Yeah,
part.
I use Litten, Litten. It's a little cat, fire cat.
Tiffany, are there any? So look at Kyle's screen on the left side where it says the source index style, index HTML, package JSON. Are there a blue dots by any of those?
Yes, my JS.
Go in there, save it, run it back.
No, it's still the same thing.
That was what the fix was for me. So
Yeah,
So-
it doesn't do anything.
So now that I'm running it more, it's keeping the search on the pages. I guess that would be the saving it part. We had to save
Tiffany,
it
you
to
could
the-
always go through and kick the browser again like you did last time and just force it through.
That's true. All right, let me try that.
All right, hit me with some questions.
Mine's not working.
We're trying to
surprise
debug.
there.
We're trying to do a debug right now.
All right. Tiffany, show us your screen. What's going on?
It's refreshing at the moment. Let's see, 3. Yeah, I was trying to put Litten in here and
Uh,
And
It
nothing.
took your parameters out.
I took those out again.
Okay, so pause. So one thing is that your input name, not search, that's going to be what the key is. Hey!
That's because I put it up here
Okay.
in the browser bar.
So in your, for your input, the name isn't search. The name is going to be whatever the key in the URL or in the query string is. So it shouldn't be search. It should be
Which line are you talking about?
on line 12.
12.
The name shouldn't
ID.
be search.
Name should be Pokemon, right?
Yeah. All right, save that, and then fire
Okay.
it off. Make a search, and let's see what happens.
Oh, okay. That
Beautiful.
worked. Thanks, guys.
Anybody else having trouble? Having questions? Having
I have a
ahas?
question.
What's up?
Okay, so for the first version of my production website, when I used my form data, I did the query string trick. So
Huh?
when you hit enter, it put the stuff in the URL and grabbed it that way. But then when I redid it as form data. It did the same thing in the end, but is there like which way's better in that situation, or does it not really matter?
I wouldn't lose a lot of sleep over it. Yeah, either way's fine with me.
Okay.
Because yeah, we could also just intercept that request, put it into form data. There we go. If we wanted to do those, like it's really handy if they're on different pages. So we have like a search page and then a display page, because then we can set the action of that form to whatever the new page is, and it'll send the query string over. That's pretty cool. If they're on the same page, either way to do that would be fine.
Thank you.
Yep. Other questions about query strings?
So if you had an array that you wanted to pass into the query string,
Mm-hmm.
like that you've got hard coded or whatever,
Yeah.
how would you tell it to pull from there and just insert that?
Man, going right for the hard mode stuff. So let's say we had an array of Pokemon. This is going to break the app, but I'll show you how to do it. It's Pokemon, and then you put array brackets after the key, and you can do that as many times as you want. So you can say like Pokemon brackets equals Charmander, and we log the Pokemon array that we get back. And fire that off. Yep. I'm going to need to comment all that out. Query string array. Let me make sure I put it in the right spot. I basically never do this. So I'm trying to go off the dome. Yeah, I did that right. Pokemon brackets equals and Pokemon brackets equals and. All right, so let's make sure that that came through the query string okay. Okay, came through all right. I wonder if there's a, oh, maybe it wants me to do it like that. Well, it gave me the first one. It didn't give me all of them. So then I might take a look at, all right, is there maybe a method on this that get all? There we go. So I do get all. Will it give me an array? There we go. There they are. We got there. See, does it actually need the square brackets to do that? Apparently it does. So then we could take those and iterate over both of them and then fetch both of them and put them on the page. That's unusual though. If you're at the point where you're trying to pass an array of stuff through a query string, you're probably better off finding a different way to do that. But in a jam, that's how it works. Cool. Other questions?
I still don't get the point of doing a query string. Do you have to do the query string in order to do the search, the form input?
How else would you do it?
I thought you could just put it in there.
Just put in what?
The form and input into your HTML.
Okay, so let's say I do that. I'm not doing any query string stuff. So I'm going to comment all this stuff out. All right, so I've just got the search form here. I enter the Pokemon that I want to see, and nothing happens.
So you have to have the query string.
Well, how else would it get? How else would it know which Pokemon I want to see?
Yeah, I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. Sorry, it's taking me a minute.
So but that's the thing. Because otherwise, I end up with a separate page for Pikachu, a separate page for Charmander, a separate page for Bulbasaur. Well, that's not sustainable. So if I want to have one page, like just this one here, and I want to be able to use that to show any one that I want, okay, well, how do I do that? You could do it kind of like Parnell was talking about, where we just intercept this request and... So let's do that. Let's say handle all this differently. And I save it in a form. Or sorry, so I take the form. And then I add an event listener to it for submit. Prevent the default behavior. And then I do a lot of this kind of stuff where like grab the form data, event dot target. I get Pokemon name with form data dot get Pokemon. I make a function called get and display Pokemon. Two things, Kyle. Two things. Throw that there and that there. All right, no query strings involved. And this takes in Pokemon. Get and display Pokemon. Pokemon. All right, so if I do this and look up old Pikachu, hey, what gives? That worked. And if I do Bulbasaur, I'll probably just add it. Yeah. Cool. I can get the whole band back together. So, cool. Why on earth would I do all this query string stuff? Can anybody tell me what the advantage of doing the query string version of this would be?
Is it so you can pass information onto a brand new page?
No, so that's one. Is that it's on a totally different page than the one that this form is on. I need some way to get the data over there. So there's use case number one. There's another one.
Looks like less code.
Yeah, a little bit. Hey, Tiffany, check out this cool Pokemon that I found in my Pokemon search. How do I do that?
Oh, no.
You couldn't. You have to tell them to search it up themselves.
Exactly. So I would go, cool, go to this URL and search for Pikachu, and then you'll see it. All right, that's fine. That's not like the worst thing in the world. But you go over here, and then you say, all right, I find it. Awesome. There we go. If I did this with a query string instead, why? That's not actually an error. I've got that there, that there. Oh, it's because it's undefined. There we go. That's what's happening. So this would be like, if there's a Pokemon, then do all that. That should not be an array. There we go. All right, back in business. Okay, so instead I can go, this might not actually work in the sandbox. Let's see. So it didn't update the URL here. It would if I was doing this in a real browser. And then I could send you this URL that has Pokemon equals Bulbasaur. And it'll take you to that exact page. The search has already been done. So if all we do is get it through the form, you have to go to the page and fill out the form. If we do it through the query string, well, now I can send you a URL and you end up seeing the same thing that I do. And you can imagine how that might be useful in situations where we need to search for something, filter something. There's a key that's tied to a particular request. We want to sort by highest price to lowest price or whatever. Also super handy for people who are tracking you to figure out which person referred this person. That's query strings.
Thank you.
Excellent. Other questions about query strings? All right.
Do you play Pokemon Go? Or your kids?
I did when it came out for a little bit, but like not really. And I've actually never played a Pokemon game before, other than that.
I've been playing it since 2017. It has changed
beautiful.
so much. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember being all pumped that I caught a Pikachu. I was like, oh, these are common. This is trash. All right. Anyway, anything else?
Will this video be available?
Sure. I got to get caught up on videos anyway, so I'll post this right about meow. How about?
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Go learn something.